evening and welcome to Current Issues. I'm your host, Hisham Tilawi. In this second hour, ladies and gentlemen, we will continue with Michael Tsarion. We are talking about ancient time. We talked in the first hour about Atlantis and about ancient religions, the fallen angels, etc., etc. I'm sure if you've seen the first hour, you will know what we have talked about. And I see a lot of people already on the phones, so I'll tell you what, we're gonna we'll come back to the program, Michael.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you. We're going. I'll tell you what, let's catch a couple of phone calls and then we'll get back into who's controlling this power and where did they get this control from. Let's go with Larry on to. Go ahead, Larry.
Hang on, let me put down my TV.
Please do.
That better?
Yes, much better.
Yes, Dr. Tilawi, long time no talk to you.
Yes.
Listen, you have a very, very interesting guest tonight. Michael, can you hear me?
Yes,
I can hear you, sir. Go ahead.
It sounds like you, a lot of things that you're saying is written in the Bible, in Genesis, in chapter 6.
That's right.
Talking about the fallen angels?
Oh, yeah. It's all over the Quran. It's all over the Bible. It's just that we have been indoctrinated.
Yeah, he's saying that it's all over the Bible, it's all over the Quran.
Yeah, it's in the Quran too. I didn't know.
Yeah,
they talk about that. They talk about when there were giants in the earth. The sons of God came into the daughters of men and bare children, and they became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown.
That's right, the sons of God.
Okay, go ahead and ask your question and just listen to him.
Well, I just want to make a statement. I don't want to ask a question, Michael. I just want to state that a lot of the cities that are found underwater and everything is because of the flood. I'm pretty sure it's because of the flood that they had in Genesis during Noah's time. And I'm just going to go ahead and listen to you because it's very interesting tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the call.
Michael, let's talk briefly about the flood.
Well, he's absolutely right. The caller is absolutely right. We would know a lot more about what has been going on in ancient history had not also the great cataclysms taken place. It was kind of a mixed blessing to those who were controlling the human race. It lost them a lot of their, homeland and a lot of their technology, but it also helps now to cover up the past. These individuals have inserted whole ice ages to make the timeline much more difficult to trace. They have sequestered a lot of artifacts that they've discovered. They have suppressed the scholars who have done the alternative kind of research, and they're pretty much desperate to not let this information about who we are come out. And as I said, I think that I'm always tracking these discoveries, as I'm sure a lot of your listeners also are. But you see, my work specifically deals with some of these psychological, philosophical questions that still people have not at all been looking into. I was inspired by a book by Jack Banninger called Past Shock, and he was the only writer that I have ever come across who, when talking about the ancient times and when talking about the alien visitation, you see, and the situation of the humankind and the secret societies, he was the only one who said, look, if there has in fact been some kind of interference, or some kind of visitation, then let us ask a very important question. What is the psychological consequence to the human being of that visitation? The world scholars are interested in finding out whether these aliens are green or whether they're gray or what size they are. Are they 6 foot? Are they 5 foot? Do they have 2 heads or 4 heads? Do they come from Sirius? Do they come from Orion? And all of this other stuff, and what kind of technology they may have used. And I think that these are perhaps pretty interesting questions, but my goodness, they are not half as interesting. They're not as important to the human race as to say, well, how were we changed by this intervention? The Bible talks about it. The Quran is talking about it. There's not a myth and legend that doesn't talk about it. There's even wall paintings all over the world about it. Evidence of the ancient civilizations are there, for even a person with a single brain cell can see that history did not start 7,000 to 11,000 years ago. But you see, we have still, it's like we've left at the door. We've come to the party, but we've left the biggest question at the door. It's like leaving your clothes off at the door. The meaning, what is the real philosophical point behind all of this? Visitation is interesting as it is, but how did this visitation and this interference change our thinking, change our biology? And this is the philosophical question that I think distinguishes my particular work. And the discoveries are remarkable because it does talk about the rise of religion, the rise of the powers of government, and the ideology that controls mankind. And
so now tell me, The question that I asked you at the end of the first hour, we were saying that the Illuminatis and Freemasons, and tell me, how did these people get their power? Because you think these are the same, if they're not the same people, it's the same power being handed down from way down then until now. Tell me, how did that happen?
Well, there's no doubt about that in my mind, that the ancient Atlantean, after the continents of old fell, after these great dictatorial, and after these, tyrannical continents fell, the descendants, there were survivors. So the big question then, which is again often not answered by people who study Atlantis, is then where did these survivors go? And of course the answer has to be that they, in my forthcoming book on Ireland, I have a book coming out this summer called The Irish Origins of Civilization. And in that book it will show that Ireland, Britain, which is always known as the Fortunate Isles, the Blessed Isles, and of course people have heard of the luck of the Irish. This whole idea comes from the fact that Ireland and Britain was a remnant of the lost continents, and that a lot of the survivors turned up there. This is very clear in the ancient mythology of Ireland. But also, one of the great empires where these individuals set up shop, again, is in the Nile Valley in Egypt, because of the fact that it was fertile, because of the fact that it was at the new equator after the pole shift and so on. So there's a deep connection between the lands of Ireland and England, Egypt. But to answer your question specifically, and in doing so, we might even be making radio and television history here, because I'll tell you one thing, that as you said in the opening, many of the researchers have discovered that the images throughout religion, the images and anecdotes, even the stories and the astrological aphorisms within the Bible are Egyptian. People have noticed that the symbolism on the royal dynasties of all over the world is of Egyptian origin.
I mean, look at the dollar. I was thinking about that. I mean, the back of the dollar, it has the pyramids, the all-seeing eye, and then the sun, which is basically Egyptian symbolism.
There you have it. And, you know, it's interesting that since the discovery of America, it's taken people in the research community of the United States. And, you know, person could probably say, okay, look, it's from the time of the great Eustace Mullins, you know, and perhaps even the Senator Gary Allen. The research into the occult history, the Freemasonic infiltration of the American government is a very, very, very new subject, Dr. Talawi. You know, I mean, it's a wonderful subject, and there's been lots and lots of books and shows done on it. But let's understand one thing. It's very, very new. This is within the last 50 years, perhaps, that people have started to ask questions about the kind of symbolism that you find in the cities like Washington, D.C. and on the dollar bill, as you say. And therefore, they've slowly discovered that it is of Egyptian origin. And the trouble is this, that in all the books that are written, they're all saying it's Egyptian. Well, my goodness. When you're talking about it's Egyptian, you're talking about a culture that's 25,000 years old. I mean, can we be a little bit more specific there? And the fact of the matter is that no, most people are not specific enough. They just go Egypt, as if, you know, that means something.
So well, now, do you know why we have that on the dollar?
Yes, it is to do with Egypt, but it's to do with a specific time of Egypt. And this is the thing that we need to come into focus more, you know, because people have the general idea that Egyptian plays some role, the culture of Egypt, the time of Egypt, which is, of course, a long time ago. That obviously these Egyptian symbols are used by secret societies for some reason. But my work is to say, okay, look, it's too vague. You're being far, far, far too vague to just say that Freemasons are connected to Egypt. If you were a Freemason, you would know the truth.
Now, was George Washington a Freemason?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Not only that, but he was a member of the Illuminati, which are groups that date from the time of Egypt and from even before that. What we have to understand, what my work brings out, is very specific. And maybe this is the first time that it's ever been mentioned live. And that is that it is from the 18th dynasty of Egypt, from the period of the Pharaoh Akhenaton, and from his expulsion from Egypt, that the rise of Judeo-Christianity begins, and that the rise of these secret societies begin. In other words, let me put it another way. Had you not had the man that we know as the Pharaoh Akhenaton, and had he not been expelled from Egypt by other pharaohs, then we would not have either secret societies in the world, and we probably wouldn't have Judeo-Christianity. That's as factual as you can get.
Michael,
people are not going to have to wrap their minds around that fact.
Okay, Michael, we're going to have to take a break. Stay with me.
Sure.
We'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are speaking with Michael Tsarion about who controls the world. Michael, what about Benjamin Franklin?
Well, Benjamin Franklin was a Luciferian. And that's a Christian. When you use the word Lucifer, Christians understand what that word means, right? But the word Luciferian is not a Christian term. It is a very ancient term that goes back to these ancient cults that we've been talking about. I prefer to use the word, Doctor, Atonist. Atonist, because Aton is the god that all these Freemasons follow. If a Christian wants to call Aton, remember Aton was the sun god, the god of light. So if a Christian comes along and says, look, I want to use the word Luciferian, that's perfectly all right. It's just semantics. But if you're really a specialist in this subject, then we must be historically accurate. All the secret societies, all of them, they don't just date back to Egypt. That is so vague, I'm amazed that people haven't moved forward yet. The idea is that it all dates from the time of Akhenaton, and Akhenaton is the pharaoh. His name means the eye of the god Aton, or the strength, or the vision, or the worship of light, the god Aton. So Benjamin Franklin, the Illuminati, the Knights Templar, and then, of course, we have a group called the Knights of the Temple of Sol-Amon, Sol being sun, being sun, being sun. Solomon is the sun. The very first king, for instance, of the Jews, after they've been expelled from Egypt, is called Saul. Most people are of the habit of spelling Saul S-A-U-L. But what they don't realize is that word is really S-O-L, Saul. The first king of the first dynasty of the Jews outside Egypt is nothing more than Akhenaton himself, the sun king, Saul, not S-A-U-L, but S-O-L. So this entire cult of the sun, which is properly called Atonism, the worship of Aton. So when you're looking at that dollar bill, I mean, from now on, you can bookmark it yourself. No, so many guests, so many books, so many DVDs, and productions are out there telling you that the eye at the top of the pyramid is meant to be this eye of Horus, or it's meant to be the eye of Osiris, and all of this nonsense. It is not, and this is from people who have not done their homework. The 14th level of the pyramid that you see on the dollar bill, and the words underneath it, the Novus Ordo Seclorum, or the New Order of the World, the eye at the top is the eye of Aton. It is the eye of Akhenaton. And that's very specific. It's not just as vague as saying, oh, it's God Horus and all of this nonsense.
So, Michael, you're confusing me. So are you saying that the United States was created by this force and it has been ruled by this force all along?
Yeah, sure, from day one. Of course, when you need to set up, remember, it ties into the old Atlantean thing we were talking about, that they needed the hardware, they needed the ores and the minerals of the world in order to build back the technological age. And so they had to subjugate America. And the time came when the Baconians, the Francis Bacons of the world, who themselves were just puppets, Bacon took his orders from the royal dynasties of the Tudor dynasty of England,
so
who are themselves blood-related.
Now let me ask you this. When George Washington was fighting the British, where was this force? Was it with the British, or was it with Washington, or was it with both?
It was with both, probably. The George Washingtons are, of course, Freemasons. So we have to understand also that there are certain conflicts within Freemasonry. Let's understand that there are dynastic rivalry as well. But you see, just like the Battle of the Boyne in Ireland was a ritualistic battle for a ritualistic purpose, like you have pieces on a board game, so it was the War of Independence here. It's just the way that these secret societies do things when they're handing over the reins of power to one another. It's a very ritualistic act in which sacrifices need to be involved, in which certain gods of death and morbidity and sacrifice are being worshipped. So we have to understand there's an occult agenda behind the wars and the battles of the world, that's for sure. But let us understand one thing, that nobody on this, well, let's put it this way. Say there was even a legitimate opposition to the royal forces of England. There is no way in hell, Doctor, that those individual forces of rebels in this country was ever going to withstand the might of the Illuminati and the powers of the royal dynasties of Europe. Nobody has ever withstood them in the past, and certainly the American patriots was not going to manage it, and they didn't manage it. That's why you now have the cult of the Federal Reserve and the stamping the dollar bill, my goodness, with their ancient symbols just to show you who and what they are.
So my question to you, on this program and other programs, they say that the Jewish people have the lion's share of this force. How did they get it?
No, you see, this is the most interesting story of all. And it goes back to the dramatis personae of the Bible. Lots of people have had many questions regarding the dramatis personae of the Bible. That means the personalities of the Bible, the Davids, the Solomons, you see, the Josephs, the Abrahams, and so on. What people are probably not aware of is that in the last 15 years or so, due to the remarkable research of certain authors, and I'll mention them in a minute, many of the great conundrums of the identity of the people of the Bible, including Jesus Christ, has already been revealed. So if people who are listening to this are still working with the old paradigm of when are we going to dig up the evidence on Solomon and David and Joseph and all, let's just understand one thing. The evidence is already in. The books have already been written that have thoroughly dealt with this problem. And we need to know about it. My work follows on from these scholars, and there's a different take on some of what they say. But let us make no doubt about it, that the dramatis personae of the Bible have been identified as members of the 18th dynasty of Egypt. So what we call the family of Akhenaton, and what we call the Thutmoside pharaohs of the 18th dynasty are the dramatis personae of the Bible. Solomon, David, all of the personalities are actually the pharaohs of the 18th dynasty. This has been understood. Now, the interesting thing is that these individuals were also going by the name Israelite or Levite. So the Jews have been very cunning, or let's say the elite, the scholars of the Jews have been very cunning to try and make it appear that they basically come into history at the exodus of the 19th dynasty during the time of Ramesses II. And then they appear in Canaan, set up the Temple of Jerusalem, and basically they're on the map, their own history. But there's been a great campaign, a very, very highly funded campaign worldwide to conceal the actual origins of the Jews and to show that they did not enter Egypt, Doctor, as a bunch of vagabonds roaming, like Abraham is portrayed as roaming, just a vagabond sort of guided by God, and suddenly ends up one day on the steps of the Pharaoh. Same thing with Moses, same thing with Joseph. No. The evidence has been proven by 3 or 4 major authors in the last 15 years that these characters that we know as the founding fathers of the house of Israel and the house of Judah, basically the Jews, were themselves pharaohs from the 13th dynasty on. From 1600 and more BC, a group of pharaohs ruled in Egypt called the Hyksos pharaohs. The Hyksos pharaohs. Hyksos meaning the word king, shepherd kings. And these individuals controlled Heliopolis and Giza and the Delta region. They were the Levites. They called themselves the Levites, and there's one of the cities in which they resided is the city called Avaris. But they called the city of Avaris Zion, Z-I-O-N. So today when people are using, the Jews are using this term Zion as a political term or as a religious term, it also was a physical term. It related to the city of the Zionists, the original Zionists, way back at the time of Akhenaton. And these particular pharaonic dynasty never went away.
So it wasn't in Palestine?
Oh, no. Palestine is so much later. And it's even doubted by many modern archaeologists now whether Palestine and the Temple of Jerusalem even existed. What we have to do is go back further to the time of Akhenaton to find out that Akhenaton, as a pharaoh, was raised by the Levites of Avaris. And do you know something? This is not a new story. Sigmund Freud, back in his times at the turn of the century, already his last book, the last book that Sigmund Freud ever wrote, was called Moses and Monotheism, in which this great scholar, this great man, discovered and tried to put forward the historical fact that Moses was Akhenaton. But nobody wanted to listen to what he said, so his book is not very well known. Then the story was picked up by the great Immanuel Velikovsky, who wrote a book called Akhenaton and Oedipus, who tried to continue the story. Of course, nobody paid the slightest attention. And it was only in the 1990, in the beginning of the 1990, like 89 into 90, that we have an Egyptian gentleman by the name of Mustafa Gadala, and I want everyone who's listening to our show tonight to remember this name and to go onto Amazon and to check this man out, or to come onto my website, thetaroscopes.com, go to the astrotheology pages and read this incredible story that is unfolding. Mustafa Gadala was an Egyptian man who was sick and tired of having Royal Academy, Royal Society, you see, scholars coming out of England and coming out of Germany and coming into his country, desecrating the tombs, and then writing volumes upon volumes of lies about Egyptian culture, about Egyptian language, about Egyptian alphabet, and Egyptian customs. So he started penning and writing his own story to expose the fact of what was really going on, and he is the man that we need to credit for discovering that the dramatis personae of the Bible, of the Old Testament, and even the New Testament are identified by the study of language and by the study of words and by the study of history, is identifying these characters as people from the 18th dynasty of Egypt. He has been followed up by another Muslim Arabic man by the name of Ahmed Osman. Ahmed Osman. A-H-M-E-D-O-S-M-A-N. Ahmed Osman, who's written many books exposing the Israelite pharaohs of Egypt. My God, the Israelite pharaohs of Egypt? How come that this is not mentioned in the Bible? Or if it is mentioned, it is very covered up.
Yes, as a matter of fact, Michael, I exchanged email with Ahmed Osman yesterday, and because I wanted to ask him about, what's going on, like with the Quran and the, his work, which your work is very much affected by his work, and I was surprised that, it really follows what it says in there.
Well, exactly. Osman is an expert in the Quran, so he'll be wonderful to have on to show how much truth the Quran has preserved when the Bible was conspicuously and deliberately muddled to hide, because of course we know it. We know in the Bible that Egypt is taboo. So of course we have a contradiction. If I'm saying that the so-called Semitic heroes of the Bible are connected to Egypt, then why is Egypt being downplayed in the Bible? Well, that has to do with the expulsion of Akhenaton and his Levite followers. So when we hear about the Exodus, we're not hearing about the exodus of the Jews. We're hearing about the exodus of a whole pharaonic dynasty and his coterie and his minions. The Moses that was expelled by Ramesses II is no other person than Akhenaton. He died very shortly after the exodus himself, but his next of line, the next in kin, the Joshua who took over from him, you see, and then there's been leaders ever since. These are the true leaders of the Levites. We have to find out why the tribe of Israel, the 10 tribes of Israel, divided from the tribe of Judah. The story of their division is lies. It's not the truth as to why they divided, because the third scholar that I want to mention to you is a man by the name of Ralph Ellis, a British writer who has cracked something amazing about the time of Akhenaton to show that astrologically in the sky, at the time of Akhenaton, some massive changes astrologically were taking place. And because the houses of Egypt, the solar churches of Heliopolis and other, all over Egypt were astrologers, I mean the whole of culture and theology and theocracy of Egypt was based on astrology, that this movement of the sun god, because they worship the sun as God, so if God is moving his house, if he's moving his astrological position, you can bet that everybody in Egypt knows about it. And this particular phase shift was from the house of Taurus, which is an astrological sign, for those who don't know, into the house of Aries. The sun moves. If people go onto my website, to the astrotheology pages, they'll have all this explained for those who don't know anything about it.
So tell me one thing. So what you're saying is, like, tell me about the Jewish people. I'll tell you what, I'm told we need to take a break, and when we come back, I want you to think about, like, are the Jews of today, are they the same Jews as they came out with Moses and the same that went in with Joseph when Joseph was the prime minister? Or are they the same as with Abraham? Are we talking about the same people, or what happened? When we come back, I want you to tell me about what happened from back then until now, and who are the Jews of today? Actually, this is the subject that I would like to know. Who are they, where they come from? We will be right back. We'll take a short break. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are speaking with Michael Tsarion. Michael, before the short break, I want to know, I'm wondering, are they the same Jews that went throughout history, or what happened?
Well, the answer is so simple, it's amazing. The answer is no, they're not. And most of the rabbis who've done their homework concede upon that point. You have the author Dale Crowley, I even believe he's been on your show, who has pointed out, I don't know how many times, that there's been about 7 different Israels. And my work also exposes that the word Israel is actually a Celtic word and had nothing to do with ethnicity or race. But that's a separate question. To speak about your question specifically, of course they're not. There is not a Jew in the world who can trace their lineage back further than the 17th century, and even that is very difficult for most of them. The Jews in the world today are people who have converted to Judaism in the same way that, say, you or I could now go and convert ourselves to Shintoism, you see, or Baha'i faith. That's it, period. There's no connection whatsoever, and this is conceded by the rabbis. Just because most of the world's Jews don't know this doesn't make this any less the fact.
So how would you answer? How would you answer someone if they say the Jews are the chosen people, that God chose them?
Well, of course, I would then be putting them on to scholars within their own rabbinical tradition, people like Arthur Koestler and Benjamin Freeman and David Cole, you see, and many other great scholars of the anti-Zionist movement who show that this is not the case, that there's no such thing, and that the whole chosen idea is a secret society term. This has nothing to do with religion whatsoever. The ones who are chosen, well, who's doing the choosing? They claim it's this being, their God, Jehovah. But what we can do, and what my work seeks to do, because remember, the authors that I've mentioned are controversial, but they are also quite tame in certain respects. The 3 authors that I mentioned do not bring their work up to date and are a little bit hesitant to deal with the secret societies and the continuation into our modern times of the people that they talk about. I am not so reticent. We have to understand that the terms like chosen ones is a term that was bestowed on the ancient people, right, the ancient Hebrews, which I'm saying that these ancient Hebrews and Israelites were nothing more than a pharaonic dynasty of Egypt. That's the first thing that needs to be understood. And that the word Jehovah, who is a God that has absolutely no antiquity, there's not a scholar in the world can date Jehovah into ancient times. It's a very modern word. And then we know that Jews amongst themselves refer to Jehovah only as Adonai. And this is the loophole. This is the thing we must understand. That the word Adonai is Egyptian. And the word Jehovah is Egyptian, Phoenician. The Jews who refer to their God Jehovah or Yahweh as Adonai betray the fact that Adonai and Aton are the same being. As you have in the semantics, in linguistics, you take the D becomes a T. So the old god of Akhenaton and the 18th dynasty sun kings of Egypt, Aton, is nothing more than Adon or nothing more than Jehovah. So now we start to see that the dots are being connected, that even the God that claims to have bestowed upon Moses the chosen people, well, Moses is Akhenaton, chosen people is his dynasty, and the people who happen to follow him. The most important thing to realize is that none of these terms have any modern meaning outside of a secret society context, and that those people who have converted, their forefathers converted to religion, that's perfectly all right. And what I'm saying,
tell me, the Zionist movement in the 1800s and in the 20th century, when they established the state of Israel, they used the term Israel. Tell me why. And now you're saying that they really have nothing to do with that term. Tell me, why did they use that term?
You see, this is again a secret society machination. No Jewish people ever even wanted to bother with the state of Israel. Nobody. The Jews like Herzl and others who came along to do this were funded by British establishment, who are themselves the descendants of the Atonist pharaonic group that I'm talking about, the true people at the top of the pyramid who know how to manipulate those below. So the people who had been converted to Judaism, and Judaism is just a religion, a very pure religion. There's nothing wrong with the Torah, and my words are not to say stop, people, Jews believing in their religion. No. In fact, my words are to say, why don't you start obeying your religion and listening to the Torah and living a moral life. A moral life does not mean butchering people who are opposite to you or being henchmen for these secret societies who are also putting you on the altar of sacrifice. But the interesting thing is this, that Zionism was a creation of the same political royal dynasties of England and America, who are the descendants of the Atonist cult that I've been talking about. So this is where the connection is. Now the word, the terms that they use, like Israel, isn't it conceded? Is it not conceded by the great Jewish writers like Max de Monte and all the other great historians from Judaism that the 10 tribes of Israel, as opposed to the 2 tribes of Judah, assimilated into the western lands after the release from the captivity of Assyria and Babylon, okay? So it's pure Jewish history to say that the 10 tribes of Israel, the house of Israel that lived in the north in Palestine, assimilated 100% with the western Gentiles and moved into the lands and became dispersed, which is why, of course, they were called the lost tribes. And that the 2 tribes remained loyal to the Temple of Jerusalem. Now, wait a minute. Then what is the modern Zionist movement today, setting up a state of Israel when there is no such thing? And that even if there was such a thing, it is long since assimilated and has no Jewish coloring whatsoever.
But you know, Michael, what really, it's kind of interesting here, because these Jews that they are claiming to be today, they were from the tribe of Judah in the southern states, right?
That's correct.
Supposedly. Then why, when you go back, you don't call it Judah, you call it Israel, which is the other Jewish state that was, actually there were war between Judah and Israel. Why would Judah supposedly call his country Israel when they were in a battle with Israel?
Well, this is the beautiful point, and this needs to be brought out because it has to do with the words themselves. It has to do with the words Judah, Israel, Hebrew, and all of it. All these words do not refer to Jews at all. This is the big thing that needs to be understood. These words are secret society catchphrases that, if they meant anything at all, they come from Egypt, and they refer to those who are initiates of the sun cult. They refer to the members of the solar church. So if Judaism is a worshiper of light, then okay, we might say that these terms can be used, okay? And that's why perhaps they might be being used. But the terms themselves do not arise or originate from Judaism. The word Judaism and the word Israel are actually ancient Celtic terms, and this is something I'll explain in my forthcoming book, and maybe later we can do a whole show on that to show exactly where these terms come from and the connection to Ireland. But even if we haven't had time to get into that, let's just understand that these were terms. Let's put it this way. Everybody who's listening to our show is familiar with the word judge. J-U-D-G-E, right? The famous term judge.
Right.
In ancient times, when you used the word Jew, you meant nothing more than the word judge. It just meant somebody who was a sort of enlightened man, an initiate of truth, a man who held great office and who had powers of discernment, and so on and so forth and so on. But it did not say that that man was of a specific ethnic or racial group, and it certainly did not have any religious connotation. What the word Israel meant, an Israelite, was a worshiper of Iesa, Iesa being the god of the sun, a beloved god of ancient times that even the Bible, Quran, talks about Esa as being one of the original names of Jesus Christ, E-S-S-A. Iesa is Iesa-alite, or follower of the sun god. Judah meant nothing more than wise one or shining one, or initiate of the sun churches of Heliopolis. But do you remember I was talking to you about the Levitical invasion of Egypt through the Hyksos dynasty? The Hyksos dynasty of Levites came from the south of Egypt. They were worshippers of the god Set, because the word Set or Sut means the west. Sethos means from the south. So the god that they worship tells you that they came from the darkest reaches of Egypt. And they start colonizing Egypt. They were very bloodthirsty. All Egyptian scholars know about this. And the temples that they took over and reigned for 300 years was Heliopolis and the Giza area and mostly the Delta. So when you're thinking about northern Egypt and the Delta of the Nile and the great city of the sun at Heliopolis, you're dealing with a Levitical setup. You're dealing with these churches and these temples of the sun that were controlled by the ancient Israelites, in fact. This is the origin of them. So then when time elapses, and these people do so many violations on Egypt, and finally the whole of Egypt rose up against them in the famous Exodus, and they were expelled, this Mosaic character. Moses is just a title, by the way, as we've been saying for Akhenaton. When they were expelled, and this is very important, when they were expelled, can you imagine, I want everybody who's listening to the show to, in their imagination, think of how you would feel if you were the pharaoh of the greatest empire on the face of this earth, we're now told to get hence. and that you were thrown out into the desert where there was drought and there was impoverishment, and all of your people were thrown out. The shame factor was immense. So then let us predict what would happen with these groups that we are now talking about as the proto-Israelite people. That was not ethnic and not racial, but was of a church, a theology, a renegade, leper, broken dynasty. These individuals then said basically this, in a nutshell: all right, we have lost Egypt forever. They even talk about Moses and his brother coming back to Ramesses. Remember the time when they do the snake and the two snakes come out? And they try to seduce Pharaoh again, trying to get back in power. Even the second time around, they were still thrown out. So when they are thrown out, this is something that is like making them smart badly. You've just lost the greatest thrones of the earth. And all the other kings and all the other potentates of the world know that you are a renegade and do not accept you to their court. This is the moment with the secret societies that we're calling the Temple of Saul and the Knights of Malta, you see, and the Freemasons who use this Egyptian symbolism. I am able to date it now to this particular moment of Exodus, when they sat down under Mount Sinai, which is why the mountain is used so much in this symbolism, and they decided that, look, if we cannot have Egypt, if we have lost the empire of Egypt, then let us, brothers, set our mind on the world itself. And this is why in Freemasonry, the supreme motto of Freemasons is Per me regis regnant. Per me regnus regnant, which means through me all kings will reign. And if people go onto my website, they'll see all the other biblical.
Okay, Michael, give me your website.
This particular thesis we're talking about can be found.
No. I want your website so people can go and see more stuff on it.
Right. It's on the Taroscope's website. I've got many websites, but if they go on the Taroscope's website, you have a link to it on your webpage. They will go to the astrotheology pages and start reading, and you will find all of this. There's lots of pictures there. The whole story is outlined. But what I want to talk about is this: that these people realize they cannot operate openly now. And as we've already discussed a little while ago, they even had falling out amongst themselves between the tribes of Israel and the tribes of Judah. And Ralph Ellis is the man who exposes why that actual falling out took place. It's not the one I tell you about in the Bible.
I'll tell you what, Michael. We have a lot of people who have been waiting on the phone for almost an hour now. You're going to have to come back over here so we can talk more about who are these people that are controlling now. Let's go to the phones and get some of these poor people off from being on hold for over an hour now. Let's go to Canada. Go ahead.
Hello, sir. How are you?
Hi.
Yes, sir. I just want to say that your guest has been saying a lot of things that are not correct, sir.
Okay.
And,
Ramsey, go ahead and ask very quickly because we have a lot of people on the line. Go ahead.
Well, yes, sir. You see, my comment is that he said that Zionism has nothing to do with the Torah. Actually, sir, that's not true, because what the Zionists believe is based on the political and ideological components of Judaism, which is that they're the chosen people of God and this is their land. So to say that Zionism has nothing to do with Judaism is incorrect, sir. And he said that Zionism has to do with this cult he's talking about, or whatever, or secret society. That's also, sir, completely incorrect. It has nothing to do with the Freemasonry or whatever he's talking about. So he's completely distorting the information.
Okay.
Thank you for your comment. That's fine.
Michael. Okay. Thank you, Ramsey.
I have no comment. I'm not referring to those who are so indoctrinated by their belief. Remember, we were talking in the early part of the show about how many people are going to have to sort of bracket if they can possibly even do that, which is, I would expect, a human trait of reason, that when you go to any school or college, they're not interested in the garbage you're bringing in from the streets. Is that not true? When you go to a university course or a night class or a school, they're not interested in the rubbish that you're bringing in, okay? So my message to your caller and to other people like him is, listen, if you haven't got the simple human rational trait to be able to bracket what you think you know, to discover something more, then of course there's no teaching a person like that, all right? They're neither a pupil nor can they ever be a teacher in their own right. I am both a student of history and I'm also both a teacher of alternative history. If I can teach something new to you, that's fine. But how can I teach it? It's because I've also learned it from masters beyond me, these other authors I'm talking about, because I'm open-minded and can open my mind and I can bracket what I think I know.
Michael, I think what Ramsey was saying, and it's something that probably everybody's saying, including me, that when we look at Zionism, we see the Jewish people behind it. Are you saying that somehow they were able to con the Jews into running behind them?
No, it's very easy to do when you set up Zionist, Jewish, so-called Jewish leaders who take an artificially oppressed group of people who have no homeland, and you spin them a bunch of lies in order to ingratiate them and in order to win them over as sacrificial victims. When you go through this process of ingratiating these individuals, you see, it's very easy to co-opt the allegiance of individuals. What I am talking about, and your last caller needs to understand this, is nothing different than the anti-Zionist rabbis are talking about.
Okay.
This is completely officially understood. I am just taking it back a little further because there's archaeological and mythological and cosmological evidence now pointing to the real origin of the Jews. I'm not interested in bandying the political terminology now that we have inherited.
We're going to leave it at that. We're going to have to go back to the phone. Shelby, go ahead, Shelby.
Yeah, how's it going, Dr. Tawali? I just want to say that some of the dates that he mentioned about the Hyksos invading Egypt in 1675 BC, the literature that I read agrees with that. There's one scholar, Dr. Walter Williams, that's writing a book called The Myth of the Hyksos People. So I want him to check out that book. I don't know, I just wanted to check that out. The other thing about the date about, Moses was supposed to have been born 1349 BC around the 18th dynasty. I think I agree with that. I wanted to ask him, has he read Herodotus? In particular, the works of Herodotus called Book 2. It's called Euterpe. And now Herodotus lives around 450 BC, Dr. Tawali, and I want to ask him, what did Herodotus say? How did Herodotus say the ancient Egyptians look? I'd like to hold on, Dr. Tawali. Let me get his little comment on that.
All right, now I'll let you hold on, but I want you to say Tilawi.
Dr. Tilawi.
There you go.
All right, great, man.
All right, Michael.
These are very key points that your caller is talking about. The Hyksos dynasty is another one of the groups that the modern scholars do not want people to know about. So there's going to be a lot of books written that will try to downplay the Hyksos, and there's already been a lot of disinformation. And even if that book is written by somebody who appears to be Egyptian, you see, you have to be very careful about these counter-agents. Because as the work of Gadala, and as the work of Osman and Ellis, and the work of myself is coming into light, of course there's going to be a need to distort. There's not very much known about the Hyksos in the first place, so it's a very, very shady area of Egyptian history. But what has been discovered is very, very intriguing. But I am always very open-minded about the different scholars who come on for different reasons.
Okay.
No, but Dr. Tawali,
yes.
Dr. Talawi, excuse me. I asked him, have he read Herodotus, in particular his histories, book 2. It's called Euterpe. And what did Herodotus say around 500 BC that the ancient Egyptians looked like? That's my question.
Oh, okay. Did you read this book?
Is referring to the fact that this is referring to the fact that Herodotus was talking about the black pharaohs of Egypt, and this is a whole other area of inquiry that I really don't want to get into. It's not my forte, it's not my strength, and it's not my of interest. I'm not interested, as I said, in the ethnic or racial origins of the pharaohs.
But Dr. Tawali, my point, Talawi, excuse me, I keep messing it up. My point is that Herodotus, he described what the ancient Egyptians
okay, tell me. You tell me.
The only point that I make, because he said that there was
you tell me how he described it.
And everything like that, and they developed the arts and the sciences. And the point that I'm trying to make is Herodotus say that these were black-skinned people with woolly hair. That's what he said. Read
black people with what?
He said that they were burnt of skin and they had woolly hair.
Okay.
That's what he said in book 2. It's called Euterpe, and he visited Egypt around 500. But I don't know why he didn't want to say that fact.
Interesting.
Okay, thank you.
Bye bye. All right, let's go to I think it was Judy or Rick. Which one? Let's go with Rick. Okay, he was first. Go ahead, Rick.
Doctor, I'd like to ask your guest where the Talmud fits into all this. I mean, haven't mentioned the Talmud, and then I have another question, if you don't mind.
Sure, go ahead.
You were talking about symbols before, and I just wonder how many of your veteran watchers realize that there's a Jewish star on the Marine Corps sword, on the British Mameluke sword, on the Army sword, and on the Coast Guard sword, and I'm sure several others that I haven't checked out yet. And I can't get an answer from anybody why these six-pointed Jewish stars are on our military swords.
Thank you. Thank you, Rick. Where does the Talmud fit in all this?
Well, first let me commend this caller in his symbol literacy. The fact that he's understood that symbols and the observation of the symbols is a massive door into these truths, because this is a man after my own heart. Symbolism is very important. Now, the Talmud fits in, of course, because the Talmud is part of the whole oral tradition concept. You know, it originated from the Gaonim, a super elect group of these Levites. Remember when we were talking about how they were expelled from Egypt, and these guys were at a complete loss? So they immediately had to set up their headquarters, and they managed to do this in Assyria and in Babylonia, in which they were mostly favored guests. The idea that they were captives in those places has about as much currency as the story that they were once slaves in Egypt. I mean, that one has been completely shot to pieces even by the Jews themselves. So we can also extend that to say that even though there was a captivity situation in Babylon and Assyria, let us be under no doubt about it that the Jewish people, the people that were claiming at that time, the Hebrews, they flourished both in knowledge and in mercantile areas. And
wait. Are you saying that they flourish on the idea that they've been victimized? I mean, the Holocaust is...
Both. I'm saying that, first of all, they, as a people, they flourished physically in those lands. They were favored guests.
But I mean, they always look at that history as they've been victimized.
Well, yeah, because of course we're talking about the disinformation and the cover-ups. But just as a pure historical anecdote,
So let me get back to the Holocaust thing. Are you saying? I mean, I just thought about this. Are you saying that they might be using the Holocaust to flourish too?
Oh, there's no doubt about that.
Just as they used the Babylonian captivity?
Well, of course they are. Anyone who does not know that the so-called Holocaust was funded from New York, and anybody who does not know that most of the Nazi party were Jewish in blood and race, then I don't know what to tell them, because that happens to be the fact there. And that all the Jews that were slaughtered were sacrificial victims, perhaps of the Ashkenaz Jew type, who were not even truly Jewish at all. It's just like you're killing Europeans, basically. And even if, you know, the whole idea was it was a ritual sacrifice. But going back to the caller's question, the Talmud is part of the original oral tradition that was handed down from Mount Sinai to the elect. If you follow the trend of my work, you'll realize that who it was that was handing this down. It was an Atonist doctrine handed down to Akhenaton. Otherwise, what are we doing with golden calves? Golden calves at Mount Sinai, is that not an Egyptian symbol of the sign of Taurus? These individuals, the original Pharisees and the elect, the elite group that I'm talking about, is the Gaonim. Gaonim is a word that is a secret word that is only known to people within Judaism, and they don't want Gentiles to know about this term. It is the reason why the G is found inside the Masonic compass and rule. When you see the G inside Masonry, it does not refer to God or geometry and all this other palaver. It refers to a super elect group of Levites who were the followers of Akhenaton, and whose job it was, they were Levites, the tribe of Levi, to preserve the knowledge that they had taken from Egypt, and they had to leave in a hurry. So the idea was that there was an oral tradition given down to the 72 that later on the Torah and the Talmud sort of emanate from. And if you want to discover the facts of what I'm saying, that there is a secret society machination, and that there is a what you might call a design on the whole world. Remember we were talking about, because they lost Egypt, their designs on the whole world? If anyone should ever doubt that, all they need to do is read the Talmud. And they need to read the protocols of the elders of Zion and find out what the Zion is. They are not hiding it, because their designs were on the whole of the world. It's not a Jewish design on the whole world. The Jews are just puppets being used.
What about the star on the swords?
Well, here we are again. We're back to the symbolism that was incorporated from the beginning of time into the American milieu. It's because that was just to show Americans symbolically what they did not know intellectually. And that is that the same cult of Aton, by way of King George, and as I've been telling you, the royal dynasties of all of the world, specifically the Habsburgs, the Merovingians, the Carolingians, the House of Hanover, and subsequently the Windsors, the Saxe-Coburgs, these people are the colonizers of America. It's not ordinary people.
All right. I'll tell you what, Michael, we only have 5 minutes left, and we have 3 callers, actually. Let's very briefly ask the questions and very briefly answer it, Michael. Go ahead, Judy.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi.
Go ahead. You're on the line.
Sorry?
You're on the air.
Hi. What's that?
You are on the air. Go ahead.
I'm on the air?
Yes.
I have the delay. I'm sorry I missed the first hour. It's so good to hear Michael Tsarion on your show. Now, my confusion is, so if Moses was really Akhenaten, and everything then was co-opted from the Egyptians, then we're talking about 5 books of the Torah being created by this cult and really having nothing to do with the Jewish religion as we know it today. We're talking about things happening at Mount Sinai, like the 10 Commandments being some sort of a myth. And you said before that the Jews are puppets, so the Jews of today are puppets of this myth that's been handed down that nobody has been allowed to come out.
That's
because
right.
of the purpose of control.
Caller, there has been an intellectual war and a physical war which is created by these powers that know how to divide and rule. In this war, opposing parties like Gentiles and Jews and Islamic and Jews, I mean, this is a study. You will see this if you open your eyes. You will see that this kind of conflict of the reds and the blues, you see, and of the blacks and the whites, and all along the road. People who study the alternative history of the world are very familiar with this kind of dichotomy. The commandments that you're talking about is not a myth. The commandments were definitely part of this original instructions from Akhenaten and his coterie to the people that were under him, because it's well known that the 10 commandments are based on the 42 negative confessions of Egypt. So there's no doubt in anybody's mind who studied Egyptology that the 10 so-called commandments are Egyptian in origin. I mean, that can be proven, and it's been proven by the highest Egyptologists up the totem pole.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it at that. Thank you, Judy.
You're very welcome. Bye-bye.
All right, Freedom, go ahead.
Yes, Michael, I have to ask you this because I've been worrying about this for years. Look,
quick.
If, in fact, the Jews were in slavery for 400 years, why don't they mention the name of the Pharaoh? Nobody seems to know the name of the Pharaoh who held the Jews in bondage and had them to build that pyramid as it showed in the 10 Commandments. Who in the world was the Pharaoh? Is this historical or is this mythical? And thanks very much.
Very good. Thank you. Good question.
I mean, the caller couldn't have asked the most important question, and I'm so glad he did. The omission of the Pharaoh is to disguise the very thing we've been talking about for the last hour and a half. If the Jewish authors had bothered to tell what the Pharaoh is, because they talk about every other anecdote you can think of is so meaningless, then why do they leave out the name of the Pharaoh? Is to disguise the fact of the Israelite origin, the pharaonic origin of the Israelites, going back to Queen Tai, going back to Amenophis III, going back to Thutmose IV, going back to Amenophis IV, who is of course Akhenaten. If they started to tell you that the Exodus took place under Ramesses II, if they give you a date like that, the whole of Jewish scholarship would have found out what we're talking about now much sooner, and they would have honored Sigmund Freud, and they would have found all of this information out. The stuff that we have been talking about, caller, in the last hour and a half, especially, has been a guarded secret of secret societies. Secret societies are set up for the express purpose of making sure that this information does not get out. That's what they're for. They're for a few other things as well, but their main agenda is to preserve the Atonist Egyptian truth that is the root of Judaism. The connections between Masonry, Judaism, and Egypt have been purposefully hidden by these people, and one of the machinations that helped to do that, to hide it, was to erase the name of the Pharaoh or the Pharaohs from the Jewish religion and the Jewish books, so that we would be at a loss, you see, to find out what dynasty we are talking about.
Michael, we're going to have to leave it at that. I'll tell you what, I mean, we probably need another show. Would you consider coming back next Thursday?
I have no problem coming back next Thursday.
Okay, I'll tell you what, I will get with you at the time. I'm going to give you another hour for next Thursday, as we are completely out of time right now. Just want to say thank you for coming on the show, and we will see you next Thursday.
Okay, and
thank you,
let me give out one website that people need to so that they are prepared next time. Can we do that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, if they go onto the Taroscope's website and go to the astrotheology pages, they will see these ideas laid out much more succinctly.
Michael, I apologize. We're completely out of time. We will see you, ladies and gentlemen, next Thursday. Be here. We will be here.
My name is Linda Williamson, and I'm with the Louisiana Violence Prevention Alliance. And in order to bring awareness to violence within our community, the Silent Witness Initiative was created. I have with me Ms. Alicia Isaac,